Tim here. Wanted to walk you through how I take songs and get them ready to enter into our main Ableton session. What I mean by that is by splitting them up to where the song actually shows all the different sections, such as the intro, verse, chorus, stuff like that, which makes it a lot easier to navigate. So the song we're going to be working with today is the Relentless remix by Hillsong Young and Free. We have the multi-tracks all right here. So first thing, you want to make sure that you are in your arrangement view. From there, you're going to go over to where you have all your files. Select all of them. Drag them over here. If you hold down Command, it'll create them all as separate tracks instead of stacking them all into one. So now we have everything entered into Ableton. I already know that the song is 130 BPM, so I'm going to change that up here. So now everything should, be working perfectly.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And there we go. I do like to rename everything over here just because later on it does make it easier to make sure that everything's in the right spot. So I'll do that real quick. Okay, now that I've done that, I can actually come up here and get rid of these extra tracks that I don't need. Okay, so now we have everything entered in here. Now the next thing that we have to do is to place markers to where we know, what everything is. So for instance, in this very beginning, when it gives us this count in,
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
I will come over here on the first one, add this locator for the count in. Now I know that 2 measures in is where the actual intro to the song starts. Now having a guide makes it a lot easier because you can see where the guide that it comes with is already starting to count in the next area. So instead of having to listen through the whole thing, you can just jump to different areas.
Verse.
So I know that right there is the verse. It also helps to zoom in to make sure you get the right measure. So right here is the verse. So I'll come in, add a locator for the verse 1.
Chorus.
Let's try that again.
Pre-chorus.
Right here is going to be the pre-chorus. Okay, so I'm going to go and enter in the rest of these locators real quick. Okay, so now I've entered in all of our different trackers so that you see I have them labeled. And we have breakdowns, different instrumentals. Here's actually a good point to make, just a little bit of a tip. In some songs there are a double instrumental, like for right here, the instrumental breakdown. It does it twice. Well, even though as a part of the song, that's considered one section, 2 instrumentals, I split it up into 2 so that if, say we're in the middle of a band practice, we decide that having those 2 back-to-back is a bit too much, and we like to cut it in half, I can easily, once we get it transferred in, just get rid of this entire section with a couple button clicks, instead of having to go and modify it later on. So any little split that you have, I would go ahead and put a marker on it, just to make things easier in the future. So from here, I try and get these as small as possible because now we're about to do a lot of highlighting. Now that we have everything split up, we have to have Ableton split it up to where it knows that they're going to be different scenes when we take it into session view instead of arrangement view. So by doing that, I'm just going to highlight everything in this section right here, come up to create, and we're going to do consolidate time to new scene. Now sadly, that's like the one option that doesn't have a shortcut, so you do have to do this every time. You click on it, it does it really quickly, then you move on to the next area. Sometimes it's better to zoom out a little bit so you're not having to scroll while doing it. I'm going to finish doing this real quick, then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now I have everything. I've consolidated all of it into new scenes. A quick note while we're here is that this one does come with the guide already there. If the tracks that you're using does not already have a pre-made guide and you're making your own, you want to make sure to do that in this mode before you consolidate everything. By doing that, like I would insert a MIDI track, like we use the Loop Community cues. And so I would have actually created a blank MIDI track, gone in there, added in all of my cues for the entire song, and then I would have highlighted and consolidated into new track. That way, again, when I bring it into my main session, that too has already been completed, and I don't have to do that again once we get over there. So we get rid of that, and we're going to save this project. Make sure it's in the right place. And we hit save. And then from here, once it's done saving, we'll go ahead and open up our main Ableton session. Okay, so now that we're in our main Ableton session, this is where we will be drawing in or dragging in the new clips that we just made. If you haven't seen the previous video that I have on how this is all set up, go check that out so you'll see where I'm putting everything and why I have it that way. So down here I always keep this blank space, which is just makes it a lot easier to work in. That's where we're going to be starting everything. So we'll make sure to label this. Let's say we know it's 130 BPM. And that's just there just to help keep track of it. So open this up. I already have in my places my loop tracks folder, and already under the Relentless folder you'll see that everything that we just did is in there. Now sometimes two will show up. What this one is, this is just the files that came straight from Multitracks, and then this one right here is the actual project that we just created in Ableton. So that's the one that we want. I know that it's mine because that's exactly why I just labeled it. So now it's just the process of clicking and dragging over. So first we have the click track, which is right here. I'll just carry it over, make sure it's on the first one, and I'll drop it in. Same thing for the guide. And this is why when we were working on the other session, I said it was good to label all the tracks, because if you didn't, these would just show up as track 1, track 2, and you'd have to listen to them individually to figure out what they are. For things like the keys, it is okay to grab multiple ones, and when you drag it over, it'll take care of a big group of them at once. That way you don't have to do it all at once. I'll have to go back and listen to this loop right here to see what's in it. For right now, I'll put it in noise. That's what a lot of times the loops are. But then sometimes they also end up being sub kicks and stuff like that. So it's always, make sure that you have that in the right spot. Looks like that's everything for in the lead tracks and the cues. And we'll move on to the bass track. We have the synth bass. A synth loop. Again, I'll have to listen to that later just to make sure everything's where it needs to be. And then vocal effects. So now everything's been brought into here. One thing to notice though is that if you double click on these, you'll see that they automatically bring it in to where it's going to loop it. So you want to make sure that you go to them and uncheck that. If not, your track is just, that one scene is just going to loop over and over and over again. Okay. So now what I'll do next is I'll make sure that everything is following the same color code. So I always make it so where the first row is always red, to show the beginning of it, and then everything else is a green color. Make sure you don't accidentally hit delete instead of your green. There you go. Okay, so I can go ahead and minimize these. Right now you're not going to hear a click track because this is set up for my audio interface, which has multiple outs, and I'm not running through that right now. So now I come over here to the side and I actually type out the different parts of the song. So this first one's always going to be the count in. If we had everything routed, it would be giving us the intro to 1, 2, 3, 4, all of that going on. So this right here is our actual intro. Here's our verse. Our pre-chorus. And you'll just follow down the entire way, just finishing that out. Once you're done with that, I would highlight them, change it to a darker color so you know that it's all there, and then everything will work as it should. Then of course you would just select this and I would drag it up here to where it's in alphabetical order so it's easier to find later on. And that's how I enter in a new song. Now of course it does seem like it takes a long time and I'm having to stop and explain certain steps. And this song does have quite a bit of parts and the song is split up in quite a few sections. A lot of songs that are much simpler, it should take you probably about 10 minutes to do all of this, maybe 15 if you run into something or if you have to create the MIDI cue track on its own. So it's not too much work and it's something that once you get it done in the beginning, it's something that'll make things a lot easier for the remainder of the time that you use the song. Hopefully that helps. As always, feel free to ask me any questions on it. Thanks guys.